Thank you, Eric. Under EU law, responsibility for compliance with food safety and traceability requirements rests in the first instance with food business operators. This is augmented by official controls applied at different stages in the food chain. My department implements official controls in relation to horse identification at marts and other sales venues, in abattoirs and at points of entry to the country. All equines, which includes horses, ponies and donkeys, are required to be identified in accordance with EU and national legislation. Equines issued with a passport after the 1st of July 2009 must have a corresponding microchip implanted by a vet, which is recorded in the passport and creates a link between the passport and the animal. The passport includes information on any veterinary medicines administered to equines. An equine for slaughter for human consumption must be accompanied to the slaughterhouse by its passport, and the information on the passport determines whether the animal can be slaughtered for human consumption. Horses treated with certain veterinary medicines, such as phenylbutazone, known in the industry as bute, are permanently excluded from the food chain in order to protect human health, and the passport of the horse in question is endorsed by the prescribed veterinary practitioner to this effect. My department has detailed procedures for the slaughter of horses in abattoirs under its supervision and has communicated these and the checks required both to its staff and to business operators. It has liaised with passport issuing agencies in Ireland and has developed protocols to allow abattoir operators to check the details of passports with these agencies to seek to ensure that they are valid and that only horses eligible for slaughter are actually slaughtered. Where forged or tampered passports accompanying horses to slaughter are detected, it is policy that such animals are destroyed and removed from the food chain.
I have to interrupt the Minister.
Just a final paragraph, if I may. I can confirm that my department has received a small number of complaints in this area. While the department does not comment on ongoing investigations, appropriate corrective action is taken if non-compliance is detected. I can advise that during 2011-2012, my department issued 2 compliance notices to horse slaughter plants. The approval of one slaughter plant was temporarily suspended. The approval of another was voluntarily suspended. And the approval of one organisation to maintain a stud book and issue horse passports was also revoked.
Thank you, Minister.
Last autumn. That was the Irish Cob Society.
Éamon Ó Cuív. Sorry, we just have 6 minutes for each Minister.
It took the Minister a long time to come to the point, because the question asked if there were complaints made and what action was taken. Now, Minister, you might give further information in relation to how many complaints have been made, when were they made, and what action was taken. And can you tell me, was the suspension of one of the organisations from issuing passports, was it in relation to the whole issue of traceability of horse meat, or was it for other reasons? And in relation to the 2 factories that are no longer allowed to slaughter, can you give an outline of the broad reasons why they're not allowed slaughter now, and did it relate to traceability? Can you further confirm that you are 100% satisfied that there is no possibility of microchips and passports not matching, or that they are matching but that the microchips can be bought, I'm told, quite easily, and that it's easy enough to make sure that the passport could be amended to match the microchip? Are you absolutely satisfied that the system in relation to horse meat getting into the food chain is as secure as that for cattle or for sheep?
I think they're all fair questions. Let me just say, first of all, in relation to the removal of the issuing agency, in other words, there are about 7 different bodies that are able to issue equine passports in Ireland. They come from different bodies, whether it's sports horses, warm bloods. Horse Sport Ireland is the main one, along with Weatherby's. But there are others as well in specialist areas. We removed one of them from that approved list at the Irish Cob Society because the department was not happy that the procedures that we expect of those organisations would be followed. We are actually making changes to this area at the moment because there has been concerns expressed and anecdotal evidence that actually passports are too freely available for horses. And so, for example, we are requiring all of the agencies now to actually provide all of their data into a centralised database that the department will have access to ensure that we know exactly who is issuing what and to who. And I think that that is necessary. Can I be 100% sure that no horse has got essentially a false passport? I can't be 100% sure of that. All I can say is that we are putting as many checks in place as we can, and if anybody has any evidence to the contrary, we will follow up on that immediately. And when there has been concerns expressed, we have followed up on that in the last 2 years. I've done that personally with my vets, and most recently when I heard the Ulster Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals making a whole series of statements that have resulted in understandable concern. The following day, in fact, I asked one of my advisors to actually meet the individual concerned, Mr. Stephen Philpott, and in fact the Special Investigations Unit of my department have subsequently followed up with him to actually try and establish any proof that he may have to back up those accusations. So we are determined to ensure that what has resulted as a result of recession in Ireland, whereby a lot of horses have been abandoned, and a lot of people who in the past would have had horses but can no longer keep them from an affordability point of view, that does not result in any fraudulent or criminal activity.
Thank you, Minister.
And as I say, if people have any evidence that concerns them, please bring it forward and we'll investigate it.
Éamon Ó Cuív.
As you said, the introduction of the microchip passport arrangement was 2009. There'll be an awful lot of horses in the system that will predate 2009. And can I ask you, therefore, when horses are brought to slaughter, do they physically check each carcass for the existence or non-existence of bute within the system of the horse to ensure that there's no carcasses getting into the food chain that have that particular very dangerous substance in it or dangerous for human beings? And the second issue is, are you proposing, or is there a proposal to introduce a centralised system, as you have in the case of cattle, for the issuing of identification to all equines in the country, so that there can be no fudging on this issue, no doubt, no uncertainties?
Thank you.
I think the public would like to be absolutely reassured, not only because of the issue of the horsemeat scandal and the whole issue that has arisen recently, but also so that all horses could be tracked and identified, because, as you've said, there are a whole lot of issues around horses.
Final reply.
Just on the final thing that you said, I think it is important to separate the two issues of the horsemeat scandal that we're currently investigating and whether or not we have appropriate checks in place in terms of ensuring that any horse that is slaughtered for human consumption has a valid passport and microchip. There is no evidence to suggest, at the moment anyway, that there is any connection between horses that have been slaughtered in Ireland and finding horse meat in Irish meat products. So it is important to actually make a separation between those two. But it is a perfectly valid question as to what we are doing to ensure that horses are slaughtered properly, professionally, and that they have appropriate passports and microchips. Horses that do not have passports and microchips and weren't required to have them before 2009, who are now going into the system, cannot enter the food chain under the rules that are there. We do check, but it's on a random basis in factories. We test meat for the presence of bute. In fact, we've asked local authorities and the factories that we were responsible for supervising directly as my department had increased the amount of checks for bute for the very reasons that you've outlined. The two factories that remain slaughtering horses in Ireland now, and there are only two left because a number of factories have decided to move away from that business, and indeed the boning hall that has been boning out horses has also stopped doing that in recent weeks. But the two slaughterhouses that remain, both of those were under local authority supervision. We are now taking them under the supervision of the department. The way in which the slaughtering of horses was conducted was the larger exporting factories, if you like, were supervised by my department in the same way that beef factories were. Smaller factories or smaller operations were under local authority supervision. I'm now insisting that all slaughtering of horses would be directly under my department supervision, which would mean that you would have a permanent veterinary presence, which is required to be there anyway, for all horses that are being slaughtered. And obviously the checks and balances that are necessary need to be in place to ensure that no horse that doesn't have a proper identification and all of the paperwork that goes with that enters the human food chain.